Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Reading from Sri Charitamrita and the introduction. In the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, Krishna is manifested in 5 different features, known as the Panchatattva, to whom Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj offers his obeisances in the 14th verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna and his associates appear as devotees of the Supreme Lord in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya, Sri Nityananda, Sri Advaita Acharya, Sri Gadadhar Prabhu, and Srivas Prabhu. In all cases, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the source of energy for all his devotees. Since this is the case, if we take shelter of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for the successful execution of Krishna consciousness, we are sure to make progress. In a devotional song, Narottam Das Thakur sings, "My dear Lord Chaitanya, please have mercy on me. There is no one who is as merciful as you. My plea is most urgent because your mission is to deliver the fallen souls, and no one is more fallen than I. Therefore, I beg your priority." With verse 15, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami begins offering his obeisances directly to Krishna himself. Krishnadas Kaviraj was an inhabitant of Vrindavan and a great devotee. He had been living with his family in Katwa, a small town in the district of Burdwan in Bengal. He worshipped Radha Krishna with his family, and once, when there was some misunderstanding among his family members about devotional service, he was advised by Lord Nityananda in a dream to leave home and go to Vrindavan. Although he was very old, he started out that very night and went to live in Vrindavan. While he was there, he met some of the Goswamis, principal disciples of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was requested to write the Chaitanya Charitamrita by the devotees of Vrindavan. Although he began his work at a very old age, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya, he finished it. Today it remains the most authoritative book on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's philosophy and life. When Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was living in Vrindavan, there were not many temples. At that time, the 3 principal temples were those of Madan Mohan, Govindaji, and Gopinath. As a resident of Vrindavan, Krishnadas Kaviraj offers his respects to the deities in these temples and requests God's favor. My progress in spiritual life is very slow, so I'm asking your help. In the 15th verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas offers his obeisances to Madan Mohan Vigraha, the deity who can help us progress in Krishna consciousness. In the execution of Krishna consciousness, our first business is to know Krishna and our relationship with him. To know Krishna is to know oneself, and to know oneself is to know one's relationship with Krishna. Since a relationship can be learned by worshipping the Madan Mohan Deity, or Vigraha, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami first establishes his relationship with him. When this is established, in the 16th verse, Krishnadas offers his obeisances to the functional deity, Govinda. The Govinda deity is called the functional deity because he shows us how to serve Radha and Krishna. The Madan Mohan deity simply establishes that I am your eternal servant. With Govinda, however, there's actual acceptance of service. Govinda resides eternally in Vrindavan. In the spiritual world of Vrindavan, the buildings are made of touchstone. The cows are known as Surabhi cows, and he is worshipped by hundreds and thousands of gopis, cowherd girls, who are all goddesses of fortune. When Krishna descends to the material world, the same Vrindavan descends with him, just as an entourage accompanies an important personage. Because when Krishna comes, his land also comes. Vrindavan is considered to exist beyond the material world. Therefore, devotees take shelter of Vrindavan in India, for it is considered to be a replica of the original Vrindavan. Although one may complain that no kalpavriksha, wish-fulfilling trees exist there, when the Goswamis were there, kalpavrikshas were present. It is not that one can simply go to such a tree and make demands. One must first become a devotee. The Goswamis would live under a tree for one night only, and the trees would satisfy all their desires. For the common man, this may all seem very wonderful, but as one makes progress in devotional service, all this can be realized. Vrindavan is actually experienced as it is by persons who have stopped trying to derive pleasure from material enjoyment. Quote, when will my mind become cleansed of all hankering for material enjoyment, so I will be able to see Vrindavan? One great devotee asked, the more Krishna conscious we become, and the more we advance, the more everything is revealed as spiritual. Thus, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami considered the Vrindavan in India to be as good as the Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. And in the 16th verse of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he describes Radharani and Krishna as seated beneath a wish-fulfilling tree in Vrindavan on a throne decorated with valuable jewels. There, Krishna's dear gopi friends serve Radha and Krishna by singing, dancing, offering betel nuts and refreshments, and decorating their lordships with flowers. Even today in India, people decorate swinging thrones and recreate this same this scene during the month of July, August. Generally at that time, people go to Vrindavan to offer their respects to the deities there. Finally, Krishnadas Kaviraj offers his blessings to his readers in the name of the Gopinath deity, who is Krishna as master and proprietor of the gopis. Attracted by the sound and left by their household deities. And when they came to him, he danced with them. These activities are described in 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. These gopis were childhood friends of Krishna, and many were married, for in India, the girls are generally married at the age of 12. The boys, however, are not married before 18. So Krishna, who was 15 or 16 at the time, was not married. Nonetheless, he called these gopis from their homes and invited them to dance with him. This dance is called the Ras Lila dance, and it is the most elevated of all the Vrindavan pastimes. Krishna is therefore called Gopinath because he is the beloved master of the gopis. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami petitions the blessings of Lord Gopinath. May that Gopinath, the master of the gopis, Krishna, bless you. May you become blessed by Gopinath. The author of Chaitanya Charitamrita prays that just as Krishna attracted the gopis by the sweet sound of his flute, he will also attract the reader's mind by that transcendental vibration. Chapter 1, the Spiritual Masters. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than the combined form of Sri Radha and Krishna. He is the life of these devotees who strictly follow in the footsteps of Srila Rupa Goswami. Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Sanatana Goswami are the two principal followers of Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami, who acted as the most confidential servitor of Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, known as Vishrambar, in his early life. A direct disciple of Srila Rupa Goswami was Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. The author of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Srila Krishnadas Goswami, stands as the direct disciple of Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. The direct disciple of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami was Srila Narottam Das Thakur, who accepted Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti as his disciple. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur accepted Srila Jagannath Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who in turn accepted Srila Gaurkishore Das Babaji, the spiritual master of Om Vishnu Pad, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the divine master of our humble self. Since we belong to this chain of disciplic succession from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, this edition of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita will contain nothing newly manufactured by our teeny brains, but only remnants of food originally eaten by the Lord himself. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu does not belong to the mundane plane of the three qualitative modes. He belongs to the transcendental plane, beyond the reach of the imperfect sense perception of a living being. Even the most erudite, mundane scholar cannot approach the transcendental plane unless he submits himself to transcendental sound with a receptive mood. For in that mood only can one realize the message of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What will be described herein, therefore, has nothing to do with the experimental thoughts created by the speculative habits of inert minds. The subject matter of this book is not mental concoction, but a factual spiritual experience that one can realize only by accepting the line of the cyclic succession described above. By deviation from that line will bewilder the reader's understanding of the mystery of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a transcendental literature meant for the postgraduate study of one who has realized all the Vedic literatures, such as the Upanishads and Vedanta Sutra, and their natural commentaries, such as Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. This edition of the Chaitanya Charitamrita is presented for the study of sincere scholars who are really seeking the absolute truth. It is not the arrogant scholarship of a mental speculator, but a sincere effort to serve the order of a superior authority whose service is the life and soul of this humble effort. It does not deviate even slightly from the revealed scriptures, and therefore anyone who follows in the disciplic succession will be able to realize the essence of this book simply by the method of oral reception. The first chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita begins with 14 Sanskrit verses that describe the absolute truth. Then the next 3 Sanskrit verses describe the principal deities of Vrindavan, namely Sri Radha Madan Mohan, Sri Radha Govinda Deity, and Sri Radha Gopinathji. The first of the 14 verses is a symbolic representation of the supreme truth, and the entire first chapter is actually devoted to this single verse, which describes Lord Chaitanya in his 6 different transcendental expansions. The first manifestation described is the spiritual master, who appears in 2 plenary parts as the initiating spiritual master and instructing spiritual master. They are identical because both of them are phenomenal manifestations of the supreme truth. Next described are the devotees, who are divided into 2 classes, namely the apprentices and the graduates. Next are the incarnations of the Lord, who are explained to be non-different from the Lord. These incarnations are considered in 3 divisions: incarnations of the potency of the Lord, incarnations of his qualities, and incarnations of his authority. In this connection, Lord Sri Krishna's direct manifestation and his manifestation for transcendental pastimes are discussed. Next considered are the potencies of the Lord, of which 3 principal manifestations are described: the consorts in the kingdom of God, Vaikuntha, the queens of Dwarkadam, and highest of all, the damsels of Brajadam. Finally, there is also the Supreme Lord himself, who is the fountainhead of all these manifestations. Lord Sri Krishna and his plenary expansions are all in the category of the Lord himself, the energetic absolute truth, whereas his devotees, his eternal associates, are his energies. The energy and the energetic are fundamentally one, but since their functions are differently exhibited, they are simultaneously different also. Thus, the absolute truth is manifested in diversity, in one unit. This philosophical truth, which is pursuant to the Vedic Sutra, is called Achintya Bhedabhed Tattva, or the conception of simultaneous oneness and difference. In the latter portion of this chapter, the transcendental position of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and that of Srila Nityananda Prabhu are described with reference to the above theistic facts. Mande Gurun Isha Bhaktam Isha Avatarakam Ta Prakasham Tatachakti Krishna Chaitanya Samgyakam. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the spiritual master, the devotee of the Lord. The Lord's incarnations, His plenary portions, His energies, and His primeval Lord Himself, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. Bhande Sri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Do Sahidito Ghora Gorodhaya Pushpavanto Chira Sangho Tamo Nudo. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Sri Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, who are like the sun and the moon. They have arisen simultaneously on the horizon of Gora to dissipate the darkness of ignorance and thus wonderfully bestow benedictions upon all. Yad avaitam brahmo panishadho tad apyashat tanubha ya atmantayami purusho itiso yangsha vibhava sadaishvarya purnanyam iha bhagavan sa swayam ayam na chaitanyat krishna jagati pada tattvam padam iha. When the Upanishads describe as personal Brahman is but the effulgence of his body, and the Lord, known as the Supersoul, is but his localized plenary portion. Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself, full with his six opulences. He is the absolute truth, and no other truth is greater than or equal to him. Anarpitacharyam chirat karunyavatarana kalo samarpayitam unnato jvalarasam svabhakti shriyam Hare purata sundaraduti kadamba sandipitaha sada hridaya kandare spurataha sva sachinandanaha. May the Supreme Lord, who is known as the son of Srimati Sachi Devi, be transcendentally situated in the innermost chambers of your heart. Resplendent with the radiance of molten gold, he has appeared in the age of Kali by his causeless mercy to bestow what no other incarnation has ever offered before, the most sublime, radiant mellow of devotional service, the mellow of conjugal love. Radha Krishna Pranaya Virik Kirti Hilandini Shaktir Asmad Ekat Bhanave Api Puvi Pura Deha Bhedam Gatam Dho Chaitanyakyam Prakatam Adhuna Tadvayam Chaikyam Attam Radha Bhavduti Suvalitam Naumi Krishna Sarupam. The loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestation of the Lord's eternal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. Shri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kirdrisho Vinayaiva Svadyo Yenaha Dhuta Madhurima Kidrisho Va Nadiyaha Sokyam Chasya Mad Anubhavataha kidrisham viti lobhat tad bhavadya samajani sachigarbha sindau rindu. Desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, the wonderful qualities in him, and she alone relishes through her love, and the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, the Supreme Lord Hare, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the womb of Srimati Sachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean. Sankarshana karana toya shayi garbhoda shayi cha bhayo di shayi seshas cha yasya yasanks kala sat nityananda vyak rama sharanam mamastu. May Sri Chaitanya, may Sri Nityananda Ram, the object of my constant remembrance, Sankarshan, Seshanag, and the Vishnus who lie on the Karna ocean, Garbha ocean, and ocean of milk are his plenary portions and portions of his plenary portions. Maya tite vyapi vaikunta loke Purnaishvarye Sri Chaturvaha Madhye Rupam Yasyad Bhati Sankarshanakyam Tang Sri Nityananda Ramam Prabhadye. I surrender unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, who is known as Sankarshan, in the midst of the Chaturvyuha, consisting of Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. His position, he possesses full opulences and resides in Vaikuntha, far beyond the material creation. Maya bharta jana sangasrayangaha sheta sakshat karnanam bodhi madhye yasyaika angsha Sri Pumam Adidevas Tang Sri Nityananda Ramam Prapadye. I offer my full obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose partial representation, called Karna Dakashai Vishnu, lying on the Karna ocean, is the original Purusha, the master of the illusionary energy and the shelter of all the universes. Yas yang sang sha Srila Garbhado Shayi Yang Hav Yabjam Loka Sangata Nalam Loka Shrastu Sutika Dhama Dhatus Tang Sri Nityananda Ramam Prapadye. I offer my full obeisances unto the feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, a partial part of whom is Garbhodakashai Vishnu. From the navel of Garbhodakashai Vishnu sprouts the lotus that is the birthplace of Brahma, the engineer of the universe. The stem of that lotus is the resting place of multitude of planets. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of Sri Nityananda Ram, whose plenary part is the Vishnu lying on the ocean of milk, that Kshiradakashai Vishnu is the supersoul in all living entities and the maintainer of the universe. Seshanag is his further sub-part. Mahavishnur Jagatkarta Mayaya Ya Srijatyadaha Tasyavatara Evayam Advaita Charya Ishvaraha. Lord Advaita Charya is the incarnation of Mahavishnu, whose main function is to create the cosmic world through the actions of Maya. Advaitam Harinad Dvaitad Acharyam Bhakti Sangsayat Sanat Bhaktavataram Ishatam Advaita Acharyam Ashraye. Because he's non-different from Hari, the Supreme Lord, he's called Advaita. And because he propagates the cults of devotion, he's called Acharya. He is the Lord and the incarnation of the Lord's devotee. Therefore, I take shelter of him. Pancha Tattva Atmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam. I offer my obeisances unto the Supreme Lord, Krishna, who is non-different from his features as a devotee, devotional incarnation, devotional manifestation, a pure devotee, and devotional energies. So, the introduction was describing these initial verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj, who took permission from the Supreme Lord. He was looking for a sign whether he should write this literature or not. One should write literatures, transcendental literatures, on the order of the devotees, on the order of the Lord, not that one writes books for some ulterior motive, name, fame, profit, distinction, adoration. These are not the reason to write books. Such books won't have that potency. The books have to be written because the Lord or his pure devotee has ordered. As Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj demonstrated, he was looking for that sign. So he went before the deity Madan Mohan and was praying to the Lord whether he should write this Chaitanya Charitamrita or not. And just then the Lord's garland fell from his transcendental shoulders. And this was the indication to Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj that he should write the books, because although Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, whose appearance it is today, wrote the pastimes of Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. Very nicely, all the pastimes are there. But some of the later pastimes he didn't cover. So Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj wanted to give those pastimes also. And he used the notes of Swarup Damodar and Murari Gupta to do that. So we have many of the leelas of the Lord that were performed in Jagannath Puri. And those are more elaborately described by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, whereas the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya in Navadvip, right? Those are elaborately described by Vrindavan Das Thakur, who's is known as the incarnation of Vyasadeva. Just as Vyasadeva wrote the Bhagavatam for our benefit, in the same way, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, he wrote this Chaitanya Charitamrita so that we can relish the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. What it means to be a devotee, right? Chaitanya Mahaprabhu manifested himself in 5 features, right? and just so that we could understand what is the real mood of a devotee. And one of the primary moods of the devotee is humility. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exemplified the humility in so many instances, and so did his devotees. When Srila Rupa Goswami was staying in Jagannath Puri, although he was from a Brahmin family, but because he was in the service of Muslims, he felt himself unqualified to enter into the Jagannath temple. And so he never went inside. And of course, Haridas Thakur, he was born in a Muslim family, but he was so absorbed in chanting the holy name of Krishna. He was chanting 1 lakh names every day and more, sometimes more. Lakpati, they called Lakpati. When you're chanting 64 rounds, then you're Lakpati. So, staying in Vrindavan, although he wasn't allowed in the temple, in his humility, Haridas Thakur would every day see the chakra on top of the Jagannath Mandir, and that was his darshan of Jagannath. But every day, that self-same Jagannath, in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, after having darshan in the temple, would come to the chanting place called the Siddha Vakul, right? Where Haridas Thakur would chant his rounds. And he would meet, the Lord himself would meet Haridas Thakur and bring him some prasadam. Right? So such an exalted devotee, but yet having so much humility. The other devotees were taking prasadam with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would repeatedly call Haridas, Haridas, come, take prasadam. Haridas, come. And he would reply, no, I'll take a little later, I'll take a little later. He felt himself so inadequate and so humble. So we can gauge our advancement in Krishna consciousness by how much we have emulated. You can't imitate. Don't try to imitate humility. Imitation humility never works. What's the saying? Ati bhakti chorer lakshana. Right? Don't try to imitate. You can you can cheat me. But you can't cheat Krishna. He knows who's actually humble. Right? So in the end, who gets cheated? We're simply cheating ourselves. Right? Genuine humility comes by the practice of devotional service, by having a proper service attitude, by taking shelter of the holy name. Then we'll actually develop genuine humility. Later on, Krishnadas Kaviraj describes himself as lower than stool in the street. Right? So Prabhupada describes in the purport that this is not some artificial display of humility, but the Vaishnava actually feels himself so low. It's hard for us to understand this level of humility that the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had in their devotional emotions. But if we continue to practice devotional service, if we try to read Chaitanya Charitamrita with a mood to understand the devotional moods of the devotees, then it will be possible by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by the mercy of Lord Nityananda, to actually inculcate in our lives and follow these Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's followers in that mood of humility. Unless proper humility is developed from genuine humility from within the heart, it's not possible to even chant the holy name properly. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that. Thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. Trinadapi sunichena, tororapi sahisnana, amanena manadena, kirtaniya sadhari. We want to always chant, right? It's not that we want to chant 16 rounds and then take our bead bag off and throw it in a locker. Done. Aaj ke liye khatam. What is it meaning, sadhari? Always chanting. Huh? No. But in order to have that desire, in order to have that ability to continuously chant the Lord's holy name, one has to feel oneself completely dependent on the mercy of Krishna. Completely dependent on the mercy of Krishna. This is the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And we saw that in the life of Srila Prabhupada also. Srila Prabhupada, for the service of Krishna, without any consideration for his bodily situation, he would serve Krishna. He was in Vrindavan, he wasn't feeling well, but there was the London Rath Yatra. So he called the devotees. I think Harisari was, Shrutakirti was the servant. Shrutakirti is now living in Vrindavan. He's an encyclopedia of the pastimes of the Srila Prabhupada. Very nice to listen to. So Prabhupada in Vrindavan, he called the devotees, and he said, I'm not so well, but there's the London Rath Yatra. What should I do? So some devotees were saying that stay here and take care of your health, and some devotees were saying try to get your health together and then go, and if there's time, and this and that. And one devotee said, Shrutakirti knew that Prabhupada wanted to go to the Rath Yatra. He actually wanted to go. Why? To inspire the devotees there in London who had organized this great festival for Lord Jagannath. So he said, Srila Prabhupada, I think it's best that you go to the Rath Yatra. And Srila Prabhupada opened up his eyes real wide and said, yes, that's what I should do. So he flew to London without much rest. He went to the Rath Yatra, and then the mood of the devotees and the kirtan, he began to dance like anything in the Rath Yatra in London. And the devotees all became ecstatic with the association of Srila Prabhupada. To actually be able to go beyond the capacity or the material body. The living entity can do that, but he has to come in touch with the spiritual energy. He has to be able to be infused and enthused with spiritual energy. And that's possible by taking shelter of Lord Chaitanya and these 5 features. Right? Therefore we chant, Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gada Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Without the mercy of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya and his various features, such as Lord Nityananda, Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, and Srivas Pandit, it's not possible to have within us awaken that highest sentiment of love for Krishna, to genuinely understand our position as Krishna's eternal servitor. Lord Brahma on the lotus flower, by hearing the flute of Krishna, that mood of surrender to Krishna as Krishna's obedient servant or maidservant was awakened within the heart of Lord Brahma. So that Krishna's flute manifested itself in the Vedas, and by hearing that, Lord Brahma was able to speak all the Vedic literatures. And the essence of all these Vedic literatures comes in the form of the Vedanta Sutra, where the Lord is giving short verses that capture and contain all the essence of the Vedic literatures. And the natural commentary on that Vedanta Sutra is given by Srila Vyasadeva in the form of the Srimad Bhagavatam at the request of his spiritual master Narada Muni. And this same person glorified in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Krishna, and all of his glorious interactions with his devotees in Braj, the essence of which Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to this world just to taste. He was wondering, Radharani has so much devotion for him, so much love, and she's experiencing from her devotion so much ecstasy. So the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, was wondering, what is that she's tasting? Right? And to experience that same ecstasy of Radharani having for himself, he came in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu just to taste that. And simultaneously, along with that, which was the internal purpose, he also spread the Sankirtan movement. He spread the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram. To deliver all the fallen souls of Kali Yuga. This is a very bad time. And it's only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. Right? If you speak to the old people, they tell you how, of course I'm old too now, how the old times were better. Right? And the new times are not so good. And that's actually fact. People are less pious. They're more filled with ahankar, right? There's more cheating in the name of bhakti. Putting tilak, keeping kantimala, but not after devotion, after something else, right? Once I was in Navadvip, and I saw one Baba. He had nice Radha Kuntilak, Japamala in Navadvip. And I saw he was carrying a little plastic bag. And clear plastic bag. And I saw that chopped up in the plastic bag was fish. Right? So that kind of bhakti is in Kali Yuga. Right? We have to beware. Be aware. Right? Don't be diverted. We want pure love for Krishna, not covered over with some desire for some benefit, our own benefit. Right? And there's so many examples of this in Chaitanya Charitamrita. As we read more and more, we'll be able to, find out all these technical and intricate notions of devotional service so that we can apply them in our devotional service and ultimately taste the nectar of pure love for Krishna. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions, comments, additions, subtractions, realizations, reflections? Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Today Vrindavan Das Thakur's Discipline Day, I think. Srila Prabhupada wrote about it, that when Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave some Mahaprasad to Narayani and then gave Krishna Prema, then her son was Vrindavan Das Thakur. So Srila Prabhupada writes about it that some unscrupulous persons, they write that he is the son of Lord Chaitanya because he gave Mahaprasad to Narayani. So we have to be careful about that.
Just see how the mad speculators, they make their own, and why? Because they want to have some cheap followers. So in order to attract cheap followers, they have to speak something new, right? So they speculate something, and in that way they try to cheat others. But ultimately, they're only one cheated is they're cheated. They're cheated from tasting the nectar of pure devotional service. So stay in the line of the acharyas, follow the acharyas, and then we're safe. Even if you deviate a little bit from the path of the acharyas, then you are in a dangerous position. One time, it flooded in Mayapur. So Achyutananda was writing to Srila Prabhupada that the flood came up to the Bhaktisiddhanta road, right? That road in front of Mayapur all the way up to the highway is called Bhaktisiddhanta Road. He made it. So the flood came and it came up to the road, but it didn't cross the road. So Achyutananda wrote to Srila Prabhupada that, Srila Prabhupada, we were saved from the flood by the Bhaktisiddhanta road. And Prabhupada wrote back that yes, we're always saved and we're safe by the road made by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So if we just stick to that example that he has given, then we'll be safe. Any other questions? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Prabhupada. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Nittai Gaur Haribo, 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 Gaur Haribo. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Nittai Gaur Premanande.